So I just got done with a 5 round session right on the bag. Did 5 minutes of each round, obviously 25 minutes or so. And usually, I'd go for a swim right after that. But nonetheless, I wanted to do this video because if you're a fan of the UFC and especially its company, I think this is something that you need to know about the current lawsuit that they're currently facing right now. Now, it's not anything new. It's actually an ongoing case from literally 10 years ago with the likes of Kung Lee, Josh Fitch. I'm sorry, John Fitch, not Josh Fitch. The AKA guy. You had Kane in there. You had TJ Dillashaw. You had Tim Kennedy. Just to name a few guys that are in that list. Brendan Vera. This fighters union of guys that were basically suing the UFC based on using their likeness in a video game and using their names to promote pay-per-views and then not giving them a sufficient amount of cuts, underpaying them, and things of that nature. And this is going on within the time span of 2010 to 2017. Now, at first, when I heard about this news, I thought this was going to be extremely alarming for the UFC to deal with. Why? Because of the fact that now they're facing a possible $5 million lawsuit in which the way that the judges and the lawyers that had written up this complaint is something to the effect of the UFC using monopoly strategy, which, by the way, is illegal to do in any one particular industry. And in this particular field of MMA, they're basically doing that, putting contracts that are borderline coercion in terms of trying to get fighters to agree to certain deals of a certain amount, and then if they can't, they'll get blackballed or not have certain opportunities within the company, or not get matchups that are deserving to them and things of that nature. But nonetheless, I could also see another situation where they may somehow pull through this, and it's not impossible for a couple of reasons. One example I can give you is Vince McMahon. You look at the way that the federal government has gone after Vince McMahon in the WWE back in the day. Hulk Hogan literally snitched on Vince McMahon, telling the federal government that all the wrestlers in the organization were using steroids, and they were using it to get big, to massive up their physique, to look good for shows, and to be competitive in this world of wrestling where they're trying to look for the next star. And lo and behold, he's one of the biggest abusers of them all. That's neither here or there, but Vince McMahon managed to survive that and became the biggest organization in professional wrestling when he had rivalries with the likes of Ted Turner and WCW back in the days. So now, the UFC is in a situation where they can possibly, if they lose, they have to give fighters a minimum of a 2-year contract, which dramatically changes the landscape of MMA. And what do I mean by that? Well, take for example, right now, you have Aljamain Sterling, who's the 135 champion of the UFC, correct? He's the 135 champion of the UFC right now. And then on ONE FC, you have Demetrius Johnson, okay? So if Demetrius Johnson ends his contract with ONE FC, and by the way, it's very possible that they're not going to hold him down or do sunset clauses or do champions clauses or anything like that that could potentially lock down his deal with another company pre or post contract with ONE FC, then yeah, that's not something the ONE FC would do, but the UFC, that's something they would do. Now, if this antitrust lawsuit was to go through, that means the likes of Aljamain Sterling can leave the UFC within, after he finishes a contract period. And now, if he's going to re-sign, it's going to be within 2 years, and could possibly get a competitive rate at ONE FC and then go fight DJ over there. Those are some of the possibilities that you see. You can see Jailton Almeida, the heavyweight, the 205, who's fighting above his weight class in a heavyweight division, punching up his weight, could possibly go out and fight the likes of Rainier in ONE FC. He could go fight the likes of Anatoly in Bellator. One of these Russian ACB heavyweight champions under Ramzan Kadyrov's organization. Japan, anywhere in the world, and that includes Arjun Buller, although Arjun Buller was a former ONE FC champion, but nonetheless, these are the mix and matches that you can get in different divisions that you get. You could get Max Holloway taking on Patricio Pitbull in Bellator, and it would be no different than you seeing Canelo jump around from PBC to Matchroom to Golden Boy and Showtime, and then he was even a HBO fighter at a certain point. So was Clarissa Shields before they closed down HBO boxing. But nonetheless, that's the kind of landscape that you're going to get out of MMA if this was to happen. But not so fast, because you got to remember the UFC is very tricky. They know how to survive. They are like an ant in an atomic